This is mostly for Torp right now because Torpedo wants to know how to double charge. But I guess this is going to be kind of in-depth for anybody that generically wants to be able to double charge in Rack 2 and 3. In general, this is one of the pieces of movement tech. Like, this is probably the only movement tech thing that I wouldn't suggest you learning straight away. Like, most tech, for example, you know, a wrench jump like that, that's easy. Generic and neutral into like side flips, mega flips, mid airs with clank, long jumps, chaining side flips, macaronis, all that kind of stuff. That's all reasonably easy stuff you can learn. Like, you know, you're doing a wrench jump into a macaroni every time you do it. But this is meant to be tech that is for the top of the top runs. Like, I'm not just talking your top level, right? Top level is one thing. I'm saying if you're not competing for world record or very, very close to it, you shouldn't even consider this strat at all. Like, it shouldn't even be a thing that you consider doing. It is a frame perfect piece of tech. Consider that. If wrench jumping was frame perfect, we wouldn't do it because it's too, or at least we'd only do the most major time saves because it'd be too difficult. So, like there, I just missed it. I went for it there, and I missed it. Sure, maybe you can learn how to do it when you're not top level, but certainly don't do it in runs. Whatever you're doing. Oh, I missed it again. I'm pretty consistent at it, but it just goes to show. You still miss it. Alright. Now to the technical bit. With that, like, thing out of the way, my disclaimer about the difficulty of this strat. The second thing I want to explain is a little bit more theory. This is, again, not as much for Torp right now. This is just, like, kind of just generic theory. The thing with the, like, I've seen a lot of people throwing double charge strats around, right? Especially in Ouya. They're like, oh, look, fair. There's a double charge. You do it and you save 0.1 second. Or here's one. You save 0.3. Here's another one 20 minutes into the run. It saves 1 second. And you're like, look, it's cool, but that's not realistic. Think about how many frame perfect tricks you're expecting yourself to hit in a run at that point. For example, let's take Super Mario Bros. Run, the first Super Mario Bros. Speedrun. There's, I think, 4 frame perfect strats in that and a sub-pixel strat. So, people didn't do those for ages, right? Because, I mean, already it was a hard game, but even in a 5-minute category, people weren't going for, you know, the 4 of the frame perfect strats. Because it's, like, just so hard. They, of course, do now, and it's a requirement for top level, which is kind of where this game is moving. But, like, it's just, you can't expect the human to be able to hit, like, 10 frame perfect strats, especially when they save such a minimal amount of time. This is different. In Energy Plus, this double charge here, for example, saves 6 seconds. The one on Oozler, if you've seen it, the Oozler double charge saves about 2 seconds, but it's the second planet in the game a minute into the run, you know? You can afford to take those risks. You can't just throw them anywhere, like places like Tabora. There is a double charge Tabora strat. There's a triple charge Notak. There's a double charge Siberius. What else is there? I came up with a double charge Aranos 2 ages back. Like, there's so many spots you can, like, anywhere you have to do a long charge, you can pretty much throw a double charge in and you will save time. It's pretty straightforward. You just will save time because you hit it there quicker and you have more speed as you hit it. But that doesn't mean it's realistic. Now that I think I've explained that and that's out of the way, let's get to the actual technical part of how to actually do double charging. So, for double charging, first off, if you're practicing it, you can do it with any weapon that can neutral. You know, even weapons like, for example, this. Oh, frick, I missed it there. But you can do it with things like the pulse rifle. Let me just proof of concept it. There. So you can hit it with guns like that, right? Obviously, this gun has a horrible fire rate. You'd never do it with this gun, but you can. So yeah, all the weapons you can neutral with. Mini nuke, freaking... I think you can even do it with the Seeker, Blitz Cannon, Rocket Tube, this bouncer, that's the name of it. Yeah, you can do it with any neutral weapon. So, obviously the two weapons I'd recommend learning with are Rhino and Turret, just because they're the only two guns you will ever actually do it with, and even if it's just a mental thing, like, it does feel different to double charge with both of these. Even if it's just the animations, or whatever, the sound, whatever it is, practice with what you're going to use in runs, if you're going to use it. In NG+, turrets. I practice usually with turrets because that's the most applicable double charge, because that's where we use it. Both on Oozla and in NG+. So I practice with turrets, personally. Again, it's basically just a mental thing, but with a strat that is as hard as this strat, you can't afford to give yourself variance in how to do the strat. Like, you should practice it as it is. Like, even though, yes, you can do it like that, right? You can just do it over anywhere. That's good for learning it, but then at some point, you have to start practicing it in context. Because once you throw in other movement before it, so you can't just have your fingers ready, like that, and then having to go into a wrench jump after it, for example, that all complicates it. And stuff like that, this is a strat you should practice in context. Now, with that said, note that there are different ways of double charging, and it's essentially down to preference. A strat as precise as this, the one strat won't work, like, amazing for everyone. Essentially, what it comes down to is if you don't do any cancelling, if you just mash, like that, I missed it, you have one frame. So it's just like, it's really hard to hit. You can do it. It's stupid. There's pretty much no reason to. Yeah, you can see I'm not even hitting it here. Let's see if I can hit it at all. Yeah, there's one. So there's one where I just charged the end. You see him like jitter and then recharge. So that's not practical because you can't control the timing. What makes my method special for double charging is that you can control exactly when the double charge is going to happen, and therefore control, and time it, rather than just trying to, you don't have to have it in a rhythm because you don't have to time it. Normally, I think a charge is exactly a second or something, and good luck consistently doing exactly 60 frames apart, charging 60 frames later, hitting R1. It's not going to happen. It just won't. So my method, essentially, the first thing you need to notice is in this game, you can buffer R1 inputs. For example, if I was like, hold up, I messed this up. If I went up here, right, and I went, you'll notice there I charged very quickly after landing on the ground, and that's because in the first bit of the charge, as I charged off this ledge, I kept mashing R1 for a bit, which buffered the first input. So then it was a very quick charge on the ground. If I don't do that, if I just go like, oh wait, I forgot to cancel, hold up. Sorry. I'm kind of improvising this, I'm not gonna lie. So if I just went, you can see it's a little bit slower. Not a good example. Falling neutrals aren't as good as at exampling it. But like for example, stuff out of like recharging. Let me go to the bridge actually. The bridge is a really good spot to explain the next bit that I'm going to explain. So let me just come forward here. Kill these guys. Alright. So, when you are recharging, so you know these recharges? The way that you get them super quickly, so you see there how, like, in my first recharges, right, what was happening, is I was cancelling, you see the animation, and you're going into it. The difference there is that I'm buffering the R1 inputs. It doesn't work the exact same on land for whatever reason. So you can't 100% tell, but I would practice this. You go mash, 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 cancel, re-go. Cancel, cancel. Now, you actually can get a visual cue of if you would have hit the double charge midair. So you can see those two types of animations there when I'm doing them on ground. So you've got this one, which is recharge, right? It's a recharge. but he turns to the left a little bit, which is too slow. I would have missed them mid-air. However, you can see, like, just his gun jitters, but Ratchet stays, for the most part, dead straight. Like, you can see it's like 1 frame between cancel and recharge. They would work. So my first piece of advice for learning this strat is to just practice it on land for ages, like this. Make sure you're getting that, like, instant recharge, you know, without the whole having to wait for ages. Like, all 4 of those just then would have missed. Alright, so the actual strat, after you buffer that R1 input, so in the first half of your charge, I just keep mashing the whole time, because that just gives me the highest chance, and it kind of helps me get in a rhythm. I don't like stopping before doing it. It's just my mental thing. Maybe for you, you'd like to only mash the first bit, and then try to focus really hard on timing it. Again, up to you. It's such a precise strat that you should figure out what works for you. But what I like to do, I keep mashing, and then 2 methods. One of them, I hit circle and R1 on the same frame, so mashing, 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 circle R1, same frame. A bunch of those would have missed, to be honest. It's a bit weird on the grounds, but it's still good for practicing. That would have missed, that wouldn't have. Those last 3 were good. So yeah, the first method is same frame, and then mashing R1 out of it. It's, even though you buffer the R1 input, it can't just be... Even though you're buffering it, like, you can't just press it once, like, or at least I don't advise it. It does work. You'll notice if you properly double charge, you actually only have to press the input once, I'm pretty sure. Wait, let me make sure of this. I haven't actually tried this. Let me really quickly make sure of this. Yeah, I hit R1 once there, and it worked. So if you buffer the R1 input, you'll recharge even with 1 input. However, that's worse to time. I personally advise, after you do the cancel, just keep mashing R1. And that also sets you up in the rhythm for hitting several in a row like that. Even though there's no RTA viable uses of many double charges in a row in Rack 2 yet, if you're doing it in Ouya, that's literally Draco for you. You have to hit 4 in a row, so you go, you know, 1, 1, oh frick, I missed it, but 1, 2, 3, 4. And yeah. The next method is what I like to call the hammer down method. I call it the hammer down method because it reminds me of like 2 years when I played guitar many years ago, where you hammer down on like the button, on the fret, and it changes the sound mid thing. And this just reminded me of that. So what you do is you're gonna do the same R1 buffering thing. After you do the inputs, you're gonna do the same R1 mashing. However, the inputs change a little bit. So the thing with double charging is, especially if you hit L1 with it, L1 doesn't make the frame window smaller, but it does shift when the frame window actually is. So for example, when Zem was struggling with getting R1-less, it's because he got used to the L1 timing, which meant that I can't remember if it was a frame forward or a frame back, but his timing was a frame forward, I'm pretty sure it was. So he was going like that 1 frame later. It's really hard to demonstrate like 1 frame difference, but yeah. So keep that in mind with L1. Doesn't make it easier. It simply moves the window. And therefore, if you learn it without R1, don't just throw in L1. And if you learn it with L1, don't just randomly get rid of it. Personally, I would advise learning without L1, because it's going to be the most consistent, because depending on how long you press L1 for, if you're doing like L1 cancel like that, depending on how long you press it for, and it can just be, you know, your finger jutters slightly more than usual, then you'll move the window by like 1 frame, and you might miss it more commonly because of something like that. So my advice is to learn it without L1, because it will be the most consistent. You might go, yes, but in theory, most of the time you won't miss it. Frankly, even if it's only 1 in 10 times you miss it because of L1, with how hard this strat is, that's still a very large amount. So, my advice, R1-less. But the hammer down, what you do essentially is, when I go into a mash, I like to lift my finger before going down. Like, I lift my finger, I don't just go, like, straight on the button. I lift my finger away from it, and then, like, smash it down and go quickly into a mash. Because for me, that is how I, like, engage the muscle. It's a bit hard to explain, but essentially bringing it back and going down is how I get into my quickest mashes. Because it, like, I don't know if it's like warming up the finger or something. I don't understand the science. It's just because that's how, for me, I do it. So what I do with the hammer, or hammer down, however you want to call it, I do my cancel of the charge, and then 1 frame later, I'm hammering it. My finger is hitting R1. So as I hit circle, I'm already bringing my R1 hammer, like, finger in. But it's 1 frame later that I'm actually doing the input. And then from there, it's just mashing. So then I can hit it like this. Personally, I tend to find more consistency with the hammer down method than with trying to do them on the same frame. I think on the same frame is hittable, but it's like significantly harder. But I know that some people really like that method with doing it on the same frame. I'm not 100% sure on the differences in how it works. I haven't gone through frame timings or anything. This is just my experience. So how I would recommend you do it is, recapping the whole thing. You're mashing R1 the whole charge before you do the double charge, which buffers that first R1 input. And then you hit circle as you're bringing your finger down. And then on the next frame after circle, you're mashing R1. And what that will do is you'll get the buffered input and you'll get the timing right on the thing. And that's how I hit heaps of charges in a row. That's just me hammering it constantly. And if you practice it enough, you can get it into your muscle memory and it becomes something you kind of just do. And you can keep doing it midair, you know? I can chain them together like nothing, you know? It's just... That's another reason I recommend learning to do double charges with the mashing through the entire charge, provided a strat where we need to charge several times becomes mandatory, or if you're doing it in Ouya. Not only does it buffer it, but it makes it way less tricky for your brain to go between the first and second charge. Because if you weren't mashing, it'd be, you know, mashing here and then not mashing on the second. And that is really weird to do. So that's kind of all the reasons I advise doing it the way I do. Hopefully this was kind of helpful. When it comes to specific situations. For example, I think the strat most people will be incorporating in at least Rack 2, which is why I've chosen Snivelak. Oh yeah, Snivelak and Smolg are the best 2 places to practice, by the way, just generally. They're amazing. Smolg is great if you're trying to just get your rhythm down and go as many as you can in a row. I've done like 17 in a row because you just have so long to play with, like going from the top of the rail. And then here is great because you die quickly and you can just keep on trying midair despite, like, even though you can practice, like, you know, on the ground, like that kind of thing, you should still move to practicing midair when you can. And this is a planet with great deaths. Granted, we're moving towards a save state modded console thing for practice anyway, and that's how I'd advise practicing then, but, you know, just for the sake of that. Now to this double charge specifically. This one's a bit weird. A lot of double charge strats aren't just hitting the double charge. It's figuring out when in, like, the certain distance. I think of the whole way I'm trying to make it as point A, point B, point C, essentially. Like, for this strat, here is point A where I'm standing. The spot I do the wrench jump that changes my angle is point B, and actually where I'm landing is point C. So between point A and point B, there is a sweet spot when I need to cancel. So I can't just go almost the whole way and then cancel. Because, well, actually I made that, but I didn't go quite the whole way. But sometimes if you go the whole way, you actually end up going below the platform. So the trick to this strat is to make sure you're doing it in a way where you're canceling soon enough. Like here, cancel. Oh, frick, I messed it up. And that gives you heaps of leeway, heaps of height to hit this strat. Let me just do it one more time. So you see there, I canceled pretty early, so I get here. That means the dynamo is on screen, so provided I had dynamo in this file, I don't because it's just a practice file, not my actual run file. I'll be able to hit circle, hit the dynamo, and keep going. So, that's my specific advice for this planet. Um, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it for double charges. If you have any specific questions, feel free to join my Discord or to join the Ratchet Discord. Um, and if you're not already in there, I assume you already are if you know about double charges, frankly. And shoot a message to the Going Commando chat, or even if you really want to, shoot me a direct message, and I'll try to answer your questions about double charges. Torp, specifically to you, um, as far as advice goes for learning double charge, again, all the stuff I said in this, but also make sure that you practice a lot. um, Unlike some strats, for example, for a strat like, I don't know, the proxy that we used to do, right? You'd come here, you'd do it a few times, you've practiced it, you've gotten good. That's okay because that's a strat. This is a piece of tech, though. Like, it's like relearning wrench jumps. You've never done them before, you have to do them from scratch. This is what this is like. It's a piece of tech, and it's really hard. You need to be learning it and practicing it frequently. It's one of the few pieces of tech I think you actually need to practice as purely a piece of tech, and not just in the context of a strat. But yeah, hopefully, that was helpful. I'm gonna freaking get a drink bottle for my throat and then jump back in the VC. Mid-air, infinite double charge. That'd just be infinite charge, not double charge. But anyway, frick you. Going mobile. It's called quitting. That's how you do it. I'll be back in a sec. Sorry that the last part of this stream was a bit dull, folks. Like, the last 20 minutes or whatever it was of me explaining how to double charge, it was meant to be really informative for a reasonably high level of speedrunner. So, hope it wasn't too dull. I'm glad you found it interesting though, Cowstep. I think you might be one of the only ones. Yo, I'm back.
Yo, yes. At the same time, I have an Australian kid screaming in my ears.
Wow. I'm at least a man-child, come on.
Fine, a man kid.